Oh, hi fans of high quality entertainment. I did not see you there. Welcome to my latest top 10 list. And this time it is on disappointing follow-ups to great albums. You know, albums that you loved. You're waiting for the group or the artist next release, and then when it's finally released, it's a major disappointment in your life. I did make a top 10 list, not in any particular order though. And I also want to talk about a few others that didn't quite make my top 10 list, but were still disappointments for me. So here we go. These didn't make my top 10, but they were still disappointing albums for me. And I'd love your thoughts in the comment section below, by the way, and a thumbs up, please. Okay. The Rolling Stones, Goat's Head Soup. Most people would admit that it was certainly not as good as Sticky Fingers. It's still a good album though, and I don't love all of the songs on it though, but there's some like Star Star, which I absolutely love. Heartbreaker is really good, but overall it was a disappointing follow-up to Sticky Fingers, because the Rolling Stones had quite the run for a few albums, and then the drop-off in quality started with Goat's Head Soup, in my opinion. But like I said, I still like the album a lot. I was a huge Uriah Heep fan, but only for a short period. Demons and Wizards, The Magician's Birthday. However, I did not buy their album Sweet Freedom, and I was such a big fan, but I guess it's because I didn't have the money to buy it, and I didn't buy their Uriah Heep live album either. So the next album I was able to buy with my own money was Wonderworld, and after that I bought Return to Fantasy, and then I guess I still bought more albums by them, but I was always disappointed. I bought High and Mighty, and that was, I think, the end of my love for Uriah Heep. Elvis Costello. I was a huge Elvis Costello fan. I still am for his early albums. But for me, the last album I ever bought by him, because it was a disappointment, was Mighty Like a Rose. I just lost all interest in him after that. I never bought any more of his albums after that. Bob Dylan. I loved and still love Slow Train Coming, one of my all-time favorite albums. But his follow-up, which I was really looking forward to, was Saved. And as far as I'm concerned, it sucked. Humble Pie. Once again, a huge Humble Pie fan. I loved Smokin'. I loved Rockin' the Fillmore and all their early albums. But Eat It, the double album, was a huge disappointment. And I bought the remastered version, which still doesn't sound that great, but they had problems. The original production of it was, I guess, a major screw-up, and they did try and fix it for the remastered, but it still doesn't sound that great. And I just don't like the album very much. Deep Purple. Now, most of you will have to admit, even if you're a huge Deep Purple fan, that Who Do You Think We Are was a pretty big disappointment after Machine Head. Although, My Woman from Tokyo is one of my all-time favorite Deep Purple songs. And that's, I think, maybe one other song on that album that I like. But other than that, it was a disappointment for me. Now, once again, huge fan of Creedence Clearwater Revival. And after Cosmo's Factory and Pendulum, which was almost as good as Cosmo's Factory, but Cosmo's Factory would be hard to beat, they released their final album, Mardi Gras. And I had heard so many bad things about it. Oh, that album sucks, blah, 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 that I never even bought it. I heard it later, and yes, it's not very good. It doesn't suck, though. I even like Stu Cook's song Door to Door, and the John Fogerty songs on the album are good. It's just Doug Clifford songs and most of Stu Cook's songs aren't very good, in my opinion. The Pretenders. I love their debut album, one of the best debut albums, I think, of all time. And so I was looking forward to their second album, which was called Pretenders 2. And I did not like it. And believe it or not, I used to be a big Rod Stewart fan. I still love his early albums. But my last album by Rod Stewart that I absolutely love is Never a Dull Moment. And after that, he released Smiler, which I never even bought, but I had heard songs from it and I just didn't like it. He just lost it for me. So here's my top 10. Oh boy, some of these are depressing. Frank Zappa. I became a fan of Frank Zappa in 1975 when I heard One Size Fits All, even though I'd heard of him for years and years. That was the first album I ever bought. I absolutely loved it, so I became a huge fan. I bought every one of his albums. But I stopped buying them when he released his 3-record set, Thingfish, which I absolutely hate. Number 9. Once again, I was a huge fan. They're similar to Uriah Heep, that I was a huge fan of theirs, but only for a year or two. Black Oak, Arkansas, their follow-up to High on the Hog, Street Party, which was just, it was okay. It was kind of mediocre though. So, and I still would buy further albums by them for a little bit, but it just wasn't the same as hearing High on the Hog and their live album of Raunch and Roll, I believe it was called. Black Sabbath, huge Black Sabbath fan back in the day, but still am for the Oz years. And I absolutely loved Sabotage. Probably my favorite Black Sabbath album. But Technical Ecstasy, which was okay, I liked some of the songs on it, but overall it was a disappointment. ZZ Top. I love early ZZ Top. All of their early albums. Eliminator is my favorite album of theirs. I forget the name of the album after Eliminator. I don't want to Google it. I don't want to Google it right now. But that was not as good as Eliminator, but I still loved it. But then came Recycler. Yes, and they were recycling the same songs. So I lost total interest in ZZ Top after that. But all of the albums before that by ZZ Top, I love. Now, I know I'll get bashed for this, but Led Zeppelin, In Through the Outdoor. Even when I bought Presents, I was kind of disappointed in it, and it took me a long time to really appreciate it. It's still not one of my favorite Led Zeppelin albums, but I do love it. But In Through the Outdoor, I just like. For me, it was a disappointing release. This used to be my... This used to be one of my all-time favorite bands for years and years and years until I totally gave up on them. And this is one of the reasons I gave up on them, although some of their later albums I did love for a while. But U2. I loved everything they did. The Joshua Tree, Rattle and Hum. Zooropa was a bit weird, but I loved that they were, taking chances and whatever. But Pop. Hate it. Don't like it. My second favorite band of all time. Only the Beatles have never disappointed me, even though they're on the list. Sparks. Their first album that I was disappointed in, I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it either. It was the follow-up to Number One in Heaven from 1979. And Number One in Heaven was their first album with no guitars. It was Some people said they sold out and went disco, which isn't true. It was produced by Giorgio Moroder. I can't even pronounce that. And it had their big hit, Beat the Clock, on it, and I love the album. It still sounds fresh today. But the follow-up, Terminal Jive, is just okay. There's some songs I love, like When I'm With You and Stereo, but overall, it was kind of bland. It didn't have the Male Brothers personality in it, and so it was a pretty big disappointment for him. And finally, the Beatles are on the list, but I still love the album. But you just have, I'm thinking back when it was released. Abbey Road came out, and of course, most Beatles fans think it's their best album, and so do I. The greatest album of all time, probably. But Let It Be, when it came out, most Beatles fans didn't know it was recorded before Abbey Road at the time. And so, for it being the follow-up to Abbey Road, it was just so raw and kind of a shock to hear them not being, I guess, perfect or whatever. But yes, I still love Let It Be. I love it, I love it, I love it. But I'm just saying, as a follow-up to Abbey Road, it was, at the time, a disappointment. Well, that's it. Thanks for watching, and I'd love your thoughts below on what you consider some of the most disappointing albums you've ever listened to. Bye.